Hello there, everybody! I'm back again with more of my bookshelf tour, part 2, the Independence and Miscellaneous sort of section. I was going to do part 2 as DC and Dark Horse, but those are actually a little more difficult for me to get to, just vis-a-vis my setup of recording stuff. I have to move more things to get to those, so I decided that since this one was on a nice, easy bookshelf to shoot, I was going to do this one today. Yay! Super simple. I am rocking a little bit of a cold and cough, so I'm sure that will make itself known as I talk for the next however many minutes. But today's going to be this other shelf over here, which contains a mix of Image, some DC stuff actually, some manga, IDW. It's a little bit of everything. This is kind of where I just keep my random things that don't go anywhere else. So I'm going to give you a little tour of it all, and hopefully it will give you guys some more ideas about things you would like me to cover, or anything you have questions about that I've been picking up. So, without further ado, let us get to this top shelf, which at first I have to move my little Arzak bust. He's a cool little guy. I got him, I don't know, from like eBay or something like that for not a lot of money. Number 418 out of 2,000 apparently. Let me move him off to the side, and then we will really get started. Obviously, as you can see from the shot, about half of this top shelf is taken up just by my Russ Cochran EC Comics reprints. I've had a lot of questions about these over the last, year or so that I've been doing the channel. I will be doing a video about them eventually. It's just been something that I have put off for a long time. I originally wanted to get more of the slipcases before I did a video, but now I'm finding that that's going to be monetarily very difficult just for where I am right now and the ones that I want that are left out there. Basically, this series was something that Russ Cochran did in collaboration with like the original art director or the original owner of EC. I'm not actually sure how it came about, but basically he was a publisher, like an independent publisher, who got access to a lot of the original EC stuff, and he published these really large format slipcase black and white editions of the EC Comics stuff. I'm just going to pull out this one. This is the Incredible Science Fiction, or the Incredible Science Fantasy, rather. And basically each set comes with a number of large magazine-size books, and then there's a slipcase holding the whole thing together, and there are slipcases for each series that EC was putting out. Up here I have Weird Fantasy, Weird Science, and Weird Science Fantasy, which are sort of their premiere sci-fi and fantasy, obviously, as you can tell from the creative title, series. I also have Tales from the Crypt. There's a couple other ones. There's the Vault of Horror, and oh my gosh, I'm totally blanking on the other one. There's two other horror series that I would like to pick up. They're a little bit more expensive. There's also like a Frontline Combat one. There's a Two-Fisted Tales one, which is kind of like war and action comics, respectively. There's a bunch of different ones. There's a lot of them. I also have this Piracy, Aces High, and Psychoanalysis. This was actually from later era EC when they sort of relaunched after the Comics Code, and it was never really as successful. But these ones right here are really sought after and nice. The slipcase is nice. The actual book printing itself is really nice. The covers are printed in color, like a thicker, glossier cover paper. And yeah, it's a cool set to have. There are other ways to collect EC comics. I think Dark Horse, in collaboration with like EC itself, whatever remains of that company, is putting out like EC archives probably every month. They put out at least one. And yeah, I like I said, this is just an overview collection, so I'm not going to go too deep into it. I will do a collection video about those specifically eventually, but just for right now, know that they are a very cool way to collect these. If you're looking for prices and stuff, try eBaying like the complete EC library or the EC Comics library, something like that, and those slipcases will usually pop up. But you're probably looking at pretty easily over $100 for each slipcase, and then the more desirable ones, more like 200 or so, and the less desirable ones, there's a couple that are probably like under 100, but they are the ones that were like illustrated prose, not really comic books themselves. So anyway, there's a lot of stuff out there, and it's a cool way to collect it. Next up, we have just the 2 volumes that I have, not very many at all that I've collected, of the Prince Valiant hardcovers from Fantagraphics. These are really, really tall, as you can see, even taller than the slipcase, bigger than an Absolute Edition, and they collect the Prince Valiant by Hal Foster comic series from the 30s into the 40s. They're really beautiful, really nice hardcover books. I think there's at least 12 or 13 of them. I actually don't know how many. I sort of just picked some up here and there when I could find good deals on them. I'm going to get more of them eventually, but it's just not a priority right now. But Hal Foster was a really amazing illustration, just guru, really cool, anatomical and human body anatomy and action drawing and stuff. And I mean, I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with Prince Valiant. These are the Sunday, full page color ones, not the like. I know Prince Valiant ran for some amount of time as like a daily black and white strip, but it's not that stuff. It's the more lush Hal Foster colored one. So a very cool collection. This is the volume 1 of the complete Kripox, Guido Kripox, I believe Italian illustrator. Really, really wicked stuff. I mean, wild and really cool. Black and white. Euro erotica. It's super interesting. Fantagraphics is putting out the complete library right now in these massive oversized volumes. Volume 2 is out. I just haven't picked it up yet. I'm sort of waiting for the price to come down because I know this one is now like $40 or so on Amazon, and Fantagraphics never does like big discounts right out of the gate on in-stock trades. At least not as big as Marvel and DC do. So probably gonna wait for that one to come down a little bit. But that is such a cool series if you're interested in Euro comics and erotic comics, black and white art house stuff. It's so cool, and I will definitely be talking about those more. I think they're supposed to be like 12 volumes or something like that. At least 6. I know. I'm almost certain that I read 12, but so that's going to take a long ass time to collect because those are thick books, and if they only put out one every 6 months or so, it's going to be a while. Next up is the 6 Gun Deluxe Editions. I'm just going to pull volume 1 out. I actually haven't read these yet, but I was turned on to the 6 Gun by a couple different people. Some podcasts I was listening to, as well as some friends who said that Cullen Bunn's writing is really good on it, and the art style looked cool. And since they put out these, relatively affordable, sort of super oversized books from Oni Press, I figured I would jump on and check them out. I think volume 3 at least is out right now, and I think we're still waiting for like 4, 5, and 6, something along those lines. I just haven't picked it up because it hasn't been super high on my to-read list. Let me see if I can get the rest of this stuff out without knocking anything over. This little section right here, these 3 books, this is my Al Williamson section, the Al Williamson Flash Gordon. This book is unbelievably cool. I can't really flip through it right here from where I am, but I've showed it on the channel before in a haul that I did. It's just an amazing piece of artwork, as well as the 2 Al Williamson archives. They're very, very thin, really small books, but they're basically like sketchbooks and drawings and stuff that Williamson did as part of his studio. And they're cool to have, but I wouldn't, recommend picking them up really to anybody who's not an Al Williamson freak. Then we have tucked away back here my lone volume of Tintin. I really want to get more. It just hasn't been a priority to collect, but I am interested in it. I was kind of looking for hardcovers, but then I think it turned out that the hardcovers are like much smaller, like digest size hardcovers. So I got this as a gift from my mother when she traveled to Europe. So she brought this back for me, and it was really cool. This is the Wits End box set, a really nice box set. I can't pull it out that well from the angle that I'm at, but this is a really, really cool box set. It collects the whole Wits End magazine. It was sort of like it wasn't really like an amateur, like a fanzine. It was like a prozine, like a professional illustrators from the 50s and 60s getting together. Amazing guys, Gray Morrows, Wally Wood, Al Williamson, Frank Frazetta, tons of people. I think Neil Adams has work in here. Almost everybody who was a leading illustrator from that time period when Wally Wood was working is collected in here. And this is put out by Fantagraphics. I'm pretty sure it's out of print now. I got it at a good time because it wasn't super expensive. But yeah, if you enjoy the kind of the EC comic stuff or any of this Al Williamson stuff that I showed, Wits End is an amazing place to check out those guys kind of being a little more free-flowing and working on their own stuff a little bit. It was sort of just a bunch of friends getting together and publishing something experimental and cool. And then finally we have the complete 8-ball. Just a tiny little box set that Fantagraphics put out collecting the 18 issues of 8-ball from Daniel Close. I believe like issue 19 through 21 or whatever are individual graphic novels. Like I think they're stuff like the Death Ray and whatever else they are. I don't really know them off the top of my head, but I think those are technically 8-ball issues, but they were just put out as graphic novels. So this is the original 18 issues where it was a bunch of different stories in each issue. So it's kind of a cool design, although the books themselves are pretty tightly bound, so it's a little harder to read. But yeah, that's sort of my very tippy-top shelf. Again, more difficult to show than the rest of them, but some interesting stuff up there. So let us reposition and continue with our mixed manga shelf. As I alluded to a second ago, this shelf is truly a travesty of shelf organization, and for that I apologize to everybody who likes to see collections in nice order. This shelf is not that. It's mostly due to the fact that I arrange my shelves in the spacing sense to fit hardcovers and oversized stuff, and so it leaves these weird little gaps every once in a while, and that becomes my manga shelf. And so that is what this one has become. I'm just going to pull some of the stuff off the front. Also, I have more manga now than the shelf really holds, so I've just started stacking it sideways because, again, I'm a terrible organizer person. I've tried to be organized in my life before, and I'm just not built for that kind of thing. It's not what I do. This side right here I've showed before in a haul video. This is all of my Black Jack vertical stuff from Tezuka. Osamu Tezuka takes up a lot of this shelf. He is one of the most creatively amazing illustrators ever, in my opinion. And I have been trying to collect some of his stuff. Some of it is hard to find and out of print. Vertical put out a lot of Blackjack volumes, I think like 18 volumes. And this is a handful of them arranged sideways here, just because, again, I didn't have that much room for it. So let me move these. And this right here is my little Kazuo Koike shelf and Goseki Kojima. This is Lone Wolf and Cub and Samurai Executioner, two series done by these fantastic collaborators. These are awesome. They're little tiny digest books, which isn't so awesome. I would love to see these in big oversized so we could really show off the art, but the books themselves are super, super cool. And then the last sideways book is a Dragon Ball Z Viz Big book. Nothing too fancy about that. It's just I found it used somewhere and I wanted to read and collect these, so I grabbed it. And now that that's all out of the way, let's see what's actually on this shelf. We have up here first, being tiny, this tiny little Metropolis by Tezuka, an adaptation of, well, sort of an adaptation of the old film, I think it's Fritz Lang's Metropolis from like the 20s. And this is kind of his take on it, which then became its own movie, Metropolis, which is an anime, which is a pretty solid movie. I got a couple Rurouni Kenshin volumes over here. I really have a lot of nostalgia for that series. It was something I watched when I was growing up in, I guess, like, probably the early 2000s, maybe the late 90s, I don't know. Whenever it was on Toonami. I'm sure there are people who are of my age who remember that. Whenever it was on, that like the Toonami anime stuff, I was really into that show. It must have been like 2000, 2001, something like that. So I had a couple of the books right here, not really in any particular order. I have some Vinland Saga, again, not in any particular order. This was all just sort of shoved up here at the last minute. Another series I really, really enjoy. And I would highly recommend collecting. I think they're up to like volume 8 now or something like that. It's really fun, kind of like Nordic Viking mixed with Saxon, Anglo-Saxon stuff. It's really cool. Dream Fossil. This is a Oh, I'm turning it the wrong way. This is a collected manga of Satoshi Kon, which he was an amazing director and animator of anime, and also worked on manga, and he passed away at a pretty young age. And so this is a collection that was put out to sort of celebrate a lot of his stuff that people might not know. Some more Tezuka stuff. I think this is MW. Again, I have as much Tezuka as I can sort of get my hands on that's not super expensive. I know there's a company out there, I don't remember what their name is, but they basically like kickstart Tezuka translations and reprints to bring it into English. It's really cool stuff. And they sell the Kickstarted stuff even if you didn't get it on Kickstarter. So I'll try to remember and put a link down below, but I don't remember what the name of the company is. But somebody can fill us in the comments, I'm sure. There's ways to get some cool Tezuka stuff. I have the Buddha set, 1, 2, another 2, 4, and 3 over here somewhere. I've read this whole series before, and I just grabbed it like used whenever I can because I would like to reread it at some point, and it's a really cool set. The 2 Princess Knight books from Tezuka. I'm gonna have to do a video on Tezuka eventually and sort of talk about what I like and what I find interesting about him, but for now it's very much an overview. This is the Dororo Omnibus, which collects like the whole Dororo saga. There are also like 2 smaller trade paperback editions if you're not into the Omnibus. Again, another Tezuka book. This is one. Well, this is not number 1. This is, I think, volume like 2. There you go. Of Phoenix, which is supposedly Tezuka's like crowning achievement in manga, like this big, huge, epic saga spanning everything in the universe and the world and all that jazz. I would like to find more of it. It's tough to find. A couple of them are really hard to find and out of print, but I found 2 randomly somewhere. I don't even think 2 is a hard one to find, but if anybody has a lead on the Phoenix volumes, let me know. Another Blackjack volume, and then finally the Book of Human Insects, another Tezuka. What's up here? Oh, just some random singles. Nothing special. So yeah, that's the whole manga shelf. It's mostly Tezuka and then a couple other series that I have fondness or nostalgia for. I haven't really talked about much manga on this channel in terms of reviewing it, but I would like to get around to talking about Tezuka eventually, because I've read some of his stuff, and like the Buddha series and some of his other individual ones that I don't have here that I've read digitally, and it's really, really good. So eventually it will be something I talk about, but it just hasn't been a priority of mine. But this is the mixed manga shelf, probably the messiest shelf in my whole library, but there it is in all of its messy glory. Here we are now, 3 rungs down on the shelf, and it has probably become abundantly clear that the theme of this shelf is disorganization. This shelf is kind of meant to be an image shelf, and it used to be kind of mixed with IDW, but then I got some more IDW, and that kind of moved, and it just moves around a little bit. This is kind of just my general oversized hardcovers for Image, as well as a few other things. This over here is the 3-set opera adaptations by P. Craig Russell, adapting a number of different opera works, which he's pretty well known for now. It's a cool set. It's a really nice, big, oversized set. Oh, sorry about the glare. And yeah, I think it's pretty righteous and really big and oversized and nice. I like P. Craig Russell's stuff. Next to that is the Zenith Phase 1 through 4 hardcovers. This was something that Grant Morrison did with Greg Yowell. I believe this was published in 2000 AD originally, and then it's been collected in these kind of magazine-size, oversized books. They seem pretty cool. I don't know that much about them, but it's, early Grant Morrison, so before he was kind of known for doing his like big DC Universe, huge time-spanning stuff. This is just a random little aside that I had, the Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past manga by Shotaro Ishinomori. I read this pretty quickly. It wasn't anything really special. I think it was originally put out on like Nintendo Power or something like that back in the day. And I didn't particularly love it. It was just kind of fun to go through and read, but not anything amazing. Odyssey, I showed this in my last haul. This is a Matt Fraction and Christian Ward gender swap take on the Odyssey, the classic Greek story. It's a cool oversized from Image. Outcast. This one is Kirkman and Paul Azaceta, I think you say? Azaceta. Sort of a horror possession takeoff thing. Have not read it, heard good things about it. Rat Queens. This is a kind of a controversial book. It was really hot when it was coming out. Like, when it was first coming out, I just remember reading about a ton of stuff about it and how great it was. And then I think it ultimately, like, went on hiatus for a while, and people were kind of upset with the creator. I don't know his first name. His name's Wybe, or Wybe. And he, like, hiatused a couple books, and then maybe it came out that the artist had been involved in, like, a domestic abuse thing, and they switched artists, and I don't actually know if it finished, or if it's relaunched, or what, but this was the first hardcover that came out. Again, I think it was something that had so much love and attention, and I don't know if it's still on people's radar because of the chutzpah around it. I'm not really sure what exactly happened. This is the Fatale Deluxe Edition, Book 1 and Book 2 from Brubaker and Phillips. There was a long gap between these, a really long gap. I had the Fatale Volume 1 for like a year and a half or 2 years before they finished collecting the series with Volume 2. It's kind of like a cosmic horror, like Lovecraft meets noir sort of thing. Seems pretty interesting. Big Hard Sex Criminals, the oversized hardcover from Image with Matt Fraction and Chip Zdarsky's work in it. It has all kinds of crazy gag stuff. As you can see down there, acclaimed author of Pussy Patrol, wrangling neighborhood feral cats while getting mad laid. And that's only the tip of the iceberg, as it were, for all of the crazy stuff that's underneath this slipcase. It's unusual for Image to do a dust jacket, so at least they got their money's worth. Oh, God. All right, a quick coughing fit later. Nameless, Grant Morrison project. Chris Burnham, I do not know him very well. I read mixed things about this, but I'm always willing to give Grant Morrison a shot, so I picked it up. Five Ghosts, Volume 1. This is a series that is about, like, I think one guy who's possessed by 5 ghosts and can kind of switch between them and has different abilities and stuff from them. It seems very video gamey. Meant to be really good. I haven't heard a lot about its ongoing series, but I know when it was collected, a lot of people were pushing me towards it, so I checked it out. The Fade Out, another Brubaker Phillips thing. Looks very nice. I have not read it. It was pretty recently collected, but again, I think it's kind of like a neo-noir mystery sort of book. Looks nice. Casanova 1 through 3, the deluxe editions. Matt Fraction and the Gabriel Ba, Fabio Moon, two brothers who work on stuff together, illustrating it, and yeah, it's a really, really cool psychedelic spy series. I think the 4th volume is in singles right now, like it's being produced in singles, so hopefully that comes out soon and finishes everything up. East of West, this is a really, really cool series. One of the best things I got out of last year reading, actually, was reading this. This is Hickman and Dragotta doing a post-apocalypse Western, Game of Thronesy, but also, like, I don't even know how to describe it. Yeah, it's really cool. It's very, very, very neat. Kind of has like some alternative history, world history stuff in there, like a lot of world building, a lot of really cool characters, and yeah, this is one I'm going to talk about definitely as soon as it comes out more. I think there's a second hardcover release, and I'm pretty sure there's going to be a third hardcover, and I think that's meant to be the end of the series. Like, that's sort of how long they saw it being, and it's really, really solid so far. Nailbiter, a horror thing from, I think, Joshua Williamson writing it, and yeah, I think it's about a serial killer, or like a town which generates a lot of serial killers, and sort of the investigation of that. Don't know that much about it, but it looks cool. Wicked and Divine, the deluxe edition by Gillen and McKelvey. Oh, Wilson Cal. I thought this was Kieran Gillen. Oh yeah, Gillen McKelvey. Okay, I'm an idiot. I thought it said Gillen McKelvey and then Wilson Cowles was one person. I was like, that's weird. No, but Gillen and McKelvey. I talked about them last time. Their Young Avengers run, and this is another thing that they do that's sort of like gods are reborn as like celebrities every couple years, and it kind of has like a David Bowie fashion sense, like glam rock aesthetic to it. It looks pretty cool. Airboy. This is a thin little book. James Robinson, I believe, is the Robinson. I think his first name is James. The guy who did Starman, and he's worked on a bunch of different stuff. And this is kind of like a post-modern. I don't even know what you would call it. Like very aware of itself. Like it's a story within a story about these two guys trying to reboot Airboy. Like it's a very meta story. Lazarus, volumes 1 and 2, from Greg Rucka and Michael Lark. Michael Lark is an awesome artist. Really think he's so cool, and I trust Greg Rucka as well. I've read some of this series, which I read digitally when it was first coming out, but I'm going to get around to the rest of it at some point. Brubaker and Phillips. Oh no, actually this was Brubaker, Lark, and then Phillips inked it off of Lark's pencils. This is Scene of the Crime. It's a pretty thin little like graphic novel crime story. It's pretty cool. It wasn't as like mind blowing as I was hoping it was going to be, but definitely worth a look if you are interested in these guys. Up here on the top, I just have this Hard Boiled, Frank Miller, Jeff Darrow. It's quite a book. If you know anything about Jeff Darrow, you have an idea about what his art is like, and him and Frank Miller take it to weird and crazy places. There is a hardcover edition of this coming out soon, so that's really exciting because I'd like to upgrade from a floppy to a hardcover. The 3 Godland Celestial editions. This is a thing that's written by was it Joe Casey, with art by Tom Scioli, and I hope I'm saying that name right. If you know Scioli's stuff, he's doing I think it's Transformers versus G.I. Joes right now, because I might be wrong about that because there was already one series, and the series that came already was I think the series that came already was G.I. Joes versus Transformers, and what he's doing is Transformers versus G.I. Joes, but if I'm wrong, just flip the names around and then I'll be right. Either way, it's like a super Jack Kirby throwback style, really cool stuff. His art on the Transformers G.I. Joe series is even more like mind-boggling and crazy, and it's kind of, it's very much a Kirby throwback, sort of the Fourth World Eternal stuff that he was doing. Jack Kirby's Silver Star. Somehow or another, Image came to have the publication rights, or like they were brought to Image to publish a few things. Silver Star, as well as the Captain Victory and the Galactic Commandos, or whatever the name of that series is, that was published by, I think, Pacific Comics originally. So this was the only one that came out, was Jack Kirby's Silver Star. And I think they delayed the Captain Victory stuff because they were looking for better like scans. At least that's what I found on the internet. But it still hasn't materialized yet. I would love for it to, because looks like a cool series. This was later Kirby stuff from like the, I think, 80s. I think this was meant to be like a movie adaptation, or like something where he basically like created this idea to then be turned into a movie, but I guess it wasn't. But yeah, Kirby, right on. And lastly on this shelf is the Chew Omnivore edition, which I have sketched from Rob Guillory right inside there, which I got at the Baltimore Comic Con this last year. I know about this series, like some of the premise and some of the characters and stuff from interviews I've read with the creators and from meeting and talking with them, but I haven't actually read it specifically, so it looks pretty cool, and I'm excited to dive into it, but it's meant to be really funny. I think it's finishing like either right now or did just finished on like issue 50, perhaps 60. I'm sorry that I'm off on that, but yeah, definitely one of the longer running sort of continuously published independent comics of the last couple of years. Not counting like The Walking Dead and Spawn and all that stuff, which have a ton of issues. But yeah, that's kind of my Image and Miscellaneous shelf. Just a collection of independent, kind of interesting oversized hardcovers that I've accrued. And next up is a shelf of real old school classics, which I think a lot of people will enjoy. And now we've come to what is almost certainly the most nonsensical shelf on this bookcase because it actually is composed largely of DC comic stuff, which, could arguably be put with the DC things that I have on my other DC shelf, but most of the DC stuff I have over there is Oversized, Omnibus, or Absolute Editions. And to me, this line of Omnis, this kind of like classic line of Omnis, I guess, is what I would refer to them as, is a little bit of a different beast. And frankly, I think I would like to collect some of the things in this kind of together way rather than having them be with DC, because even though the creators and the publishing companies are a little bit different, I do feel it kind of goes together, if you catch my drift. So this is probably, I don't know if it's my favorite shelf that I have, but in terms of things that really speak to me and in things that I believe to be the most accurate of the kind of tastes that I put out there with my kind of classic comics, this is the shelf right here. It has a lot of these DC omnibus editions is what they were originally called, but they are not omnibus in the kind of traditional oversized sense that we have now. And then at the very end of this shelf, there's a couple randos that I'll talk about that just happen to end up here. Yeah, it's just really neat shelf, and there's a lot of classics in here. So let's start on the left side. This is the Sky Masters of the Space Force soft cover from I think it's not Pacific Comics, but it's like it's a small press. I don't know what the name is, but this is a really cool comic. Collects the Sunday pages and the daily strips of Sky Masters, which was done by Jack Kirby, written by Dick and Dave Wood, and then inked by Wally Wood and Dick Ayers at various times, with Kirby penciling the whole thing, and I think he actually ended up inking himself for some of this run, which is kind of unusual for Kirby. And it's really very neat. I think I talked about it on a haul video before. It has some beautiful stuff, especially at the beginning when Wally Wood was inking over Kirby. It's gnarly. It's really good. And I think Kirby himself has said that Wally Wood was his favorite inker of people who worked on his stuff. So, or at least the one that he thinks got it the most. I don't know if he was necessarily like his favorite because he didn't work with him that much, but he has said that he thought Wally was like one of the best inkers, if not the best. This is the Tarzan Omnibus by Joe Kubert. It's a really nice thick trade paperback. Dark Horse does these omnibus editions of some of their stuff, which they put out previously. These were previously put out in sort of DC Archive style, individual hardcovers, but they were a little more expensive, and this was released not too long ago. This is a classic run on Tarzan, written, colored. I don't know if he originally colored it, but written, penciled, inked, lettered by Joe Kubert, and I'm not sure if he colored it. I don't think he did, but quite a one-man show of force. There's also some artist editions from IDW which collect chunks of this run, and it's a really, really cool book. And a nice thick paperback. Definitely something that I would recommend even if you don't usually collect paperbacks like myself. This 2-volume set is the Enemy Ace Archives from DC Comics. This is part of their Archive Edition series, which is similar to the Marvel Masterworks series. This one over here is Volume 1, and this one's Volume 2. And again, the reason I got this is because these are Joe Kubert comics, pretty much exclusively. I'm pretty sure he's the one that has all of the work in here. I'm not sure if there's anybody else at all. I think they're all Joe Kubert stuff. But it's all the stories of Enemy Ace, which is from Star Spangled War Stories, Our Army at War, and Showcase. So a bunch of different DC lines. You know, if you know DC Comics back in the day when they were doing these war stories, they had a number of different magazines running that were war-focused magazines, and then different creators would do different sort of short stories in the magazine. So the Enemy Ace was a series that Kubert worked on, which was a number of short entries, and they're all collected here. I would love to see an oversized omnibus version of this, as well as these 4 bad boys, the Sergeant Rock Archives. Again, Joe Kubert doing Sergeant Rock. These are fantastic. I mean, you can just see from the covers, sorry about the glare, but you can see from the covers that these are just some of the finest war comics ever done. I mean, I think almost universally people would consider Joe Kubert to be the finest teller of war stories from this time period. A lot of these guys, like Jack Kirby and Joe Kubert and a number of others, served in the Army, especially during World War II. And a lot of the early comics, like Captain America stuff, obviously was influenced by that, as well as when they got back from the war, there was a large influence on war comics and things. And again, this is from GI Combat, Our Army at War, and I think Star Spangled War stories as well. Actually, this looks like it might be all from Our Army at War and Showcase Comics. So this is only 4 volumes. There are more Sergeant Rock stories than these 4 volumes, but there are no more released in collections, at least in this archive edition. I hope that changes eventually. I really would like to get a Sergeant Rock omnibus. That's probably my most... I don't know. I'm not sure if that's my most requested one that I can think of, but like that's almost one of the most requested ones that I would want to do. The rest of these are mostly Jack Kirby. There's a couple Steve Ditko things, and there's a Joe Kubert one. I actually don't think I have the Steve Ditko ones up here, but there are some Steve Ditko books in this style. This isn't in like a real order, but I'll just show you what I have in here. This is Jack Kirby's The Demon. This is from when he was working at DC Comics after he left Marvel in the late 60s. And this is the whole series he did on The Demon. These are like kind of pop art inspired omnibuses, and they have like a very matte paper and coloring to them. So it looks kind of like the old comics would. I like it a lot, actually. I think when I first read it, I wasn't a big fan of it, but now that I've looked at them a little more, I do think that the matte... the non-glossy paper really does improve the kind of reading style of these particular kind of comics. I'm not saying I would like, Saga or something to be in a matte finish, but this I think really works well. Next is the Fourth World Omnibus, of which I have all 4, although 2 and 4 I have in soft cover, because those are pretty tough to find. So I have 1 and 3 in hardcover and 2 and 4 in soft cover. These collect the Joe Kirby, that would be a great collaboration. Jack Kirby, Fourth World stuff, which includes the Forever People, the Mr. Miracle, the New Gods, and Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen, which were 4 series that he was doing, which incorporated all of his Fourth World cosmic New God nuttiness that Kirby was known for at the time. A really cool series. Again, that's one I would love to see either an absolute or an omnibus. So that would be an amazing collection. I have the 2 Commandy omnibus volumes. Commandy Volume 1 and 2. These are pretty tough to find, Volume 1 is. But actually, at the time of this recording, there's going to be a new Commandy omnibus, which looks like it's going to be an oversized one, which collects all of this stuff. So that's really nice. I hope that means we're going to get more oversized omnibus collecting all these old school, these old omnibus that DC put out. But the Commandy stuff's really cool. It's kind of like a Planet of the Apes style thing that Kirby was working on. The Losers, which is another war comic that Kirby did for DC. This might have been from like the 50s, I think. This was 70s. Okay. I thought that this was his earlier one, but this is from a later Kirby after he left Marvel, so a war comic back from then. Newsboy Legion, Volume 1. This is a really old one. I think this is like Joe Simon and Kirby, so this is from like 30s, 40s. Must have been 1942. Yeah, so this is a much older one. And the Newsboy Legion's kids actually are in the Fourth World stuff. I think they show up in that. Sandman by Joe Simon and Kirby. This is a cool omnibus because it collects the Golden Age Sandman stuff as well as the Sandman 1974 reboot sort of thing that they did. So it's a mix of Golden Age, older stuff, and also later. I think there's just one issue in here of like 70s Sandman stuff. Not sure if I'm really going to be able to find it and show you. But the point being, it's Kirby's work on Sandman, and I love Jack Kirby. Challengers of the Unknown. This was a series that Kirby did pre-Marvel days, like pre-big Marvel days, pre-Fantastic Four, like the late 50s. And it was kind of like a precursor to the Fantastic Four, like a very similar science team,
obviously you can see just from looking at it, they kind of have like a similar vibe to the Fantastic Four, sort of tackling unknown elements and stuff like that. The Jack Kirby Omnibus, this is kind of like a catch-all thing for series that he worked on but didn't have extensive runs on. So it collects stuff from Green Arrow seems to be the star of this one, but it looks like there's a lot of different stuff in here. And then Omnibus Volume 2, which again collects just work that Kirby did on a variety of superhero titles from DC. Yeah, you can see the stuff on the back. It's a lot of different work. The Viking Prince. This is a Joe Kubert style, Viking sword and fantasy kind of deal. I don't know which years this took place over. I think it was a backup issue in The Brave and the Bold and Our Army of War. So it was kind of like backups in some of the war comics and team-up comics, just short things that Kubert was working on, which ended up being collected here, which is really nice. The Commandy ones I showed you. This is a weird one. This is the King of the World. It is one of the Wizard King trilogy graphic novels that I think only 2 have ever been published from that Wally Wood was working on. This is like a Vanguard reprint, which has some censorship and some of the nudity and stuff. But it's kind of weird. But I'm just borrowing this from a friend. I haven't really read it that much yet. But it was something that interested me because it was kind of one of the earlier graphic novels, I think, from the 70s that Wally Wood was working on. But honestly, it's this just isn't the greatest edition of it. And then we just have some random extras over here. This is one of the Mobile Suit Gundam manga, one of the hardcover ones from Vertical that I want to get more of. I just picked this up because it was used somewhere and pretty cheap, and I love Mobile Suit. This is one of the Michael Moorcock Elric library books. This particular one is volume 4, the most recent one. I also have volumes 1, 2, and 3 down here. You'll see on the next shelf. And then these are the 2 Copra books that I have, Round 1 and Round 2, the 2 softcover collections, which collects the stuff from Michel Fife, which is a really cool art-focused pop superhero, supervillain story clash thing. It's kind of just like a really neat... it's all done just by him. I've talked about it in hauls before, so definitely an awesome shelf all in all. This stuff especially, I really love a lot of it, but I wish and I am hopeful that we will be getting some more of it, like the Commandy Omnibus coming out. I really want a Fourth World Omnibus. Really want a Sergeant Rock Omnibus. I would just love more of this stuff to be collected in a premium format because it really deserves it. This shelf right here is kind of a weird one. It's what I would call the independent miscellaneous shelf. It's sort of just books that don't really fit anywhere else. They're just independent publications, and some IDW stuff is probably the bigger stuff at the end of it, but it's just kind of a random hodgepodge of things, as the rest of the bottom of this bookcase is. Over here on the very far left, we have the rest of the Moorcock library stuff, which I mentioned earlier. If I can actually pull them out, they're really hard to get out right now. But these are really cool hardcovers from Titan Comics. They're standard size. They're coming out right now. I think there's going to be like 15 of them or something ridiculous like that. And they collect a series that were the Elric stuff that was done in like the 80s and 90s. P. Craig Russell has work on this. Roy Thomas worked on adapting the script of it. And they look really, really nice. Somebody told me that they were recolored. That is very likely the case. If other people think it is, then it probably is, because I've never seen the originals, but I don't think the recoloring looks bad, which is unusual, because usually I do think it looks bad. Here is Klaus, the Grant Morrison Santa Claus Takeoff tale that Boom Studios put out. This is a hardcover that everybody was kind of going nuts for a little while, so I decided to pick it up while it was cheap. And I have not read it yet, but I've heard it's really nice. It just came out pretty recently, so I haven't got around to it. Here is Ragnarok, a Walt Simonson series. Simonson really loves him some Thor and Norse mythology, and so he's taken his proficiency and knowledge of that stuff and turned it into a series at IDW, which is obviously about Ragnarok, the death of the gods, the last stand of the gods. And as you can see, there's a skeletal Thor on the front. And Simonson's art is still really strong to this day. He continues to be a really fun comic artist to follow. Here's my paltry little 2000 AD collection. Not much to it. A couple Judge Dredd case files, which I'll just pull this one out. You can see are kind of these like phone book style, black and white, just collections of the Judge Dredd stuff. 2000 AD is put out in like different issues called progs, and each prog has different short stories in it. I have some Judge Dredd ones, and then I have the restricted files, which is annuals, and then I have Rogue Trooper, which is another separate series that was going on in 2000 AD. I want to collect some of the Nemesis Warlock stuff and a few others. There's a lot of cool series that was going on in 2000 AD. I just haven't gotten around to it, but there's cool stuff out there. You should search for the company if you're interested. Here is the big honkin' oversized Nausicaa box set. Kind of unusual for an anime to have, or a manga to have a big oversized box set like this. Most manga are sort of the smaller form factor, but this collects the full run from Miyazaki, which was done over the course of many years before and after the movie was completed, and published by Viz Media. So I don't think it's too expensive, but it's a cool hardcover set if you're into manga. Next up is the Rachel Rising Omnibus. This is actually the only thing I have from Terry Moore on my shelf, which I'd like to rectify, but I want to get the Echo hardcover collection, and I know that's pretty tough to come by, and Strangers in Paradise hardcover is near impossible, so I'll probably end up getting that one in softcover. But this is the full omnibus set from, I think, his most recent completed series, Rachel Rising. I've heard really good things from pretty much everybody that's read it, but I haven't got around to it myself. I have met Terry Moore at Baltimore Comic-Con, just sort of talked to him in passing. Seems like a really cool and genuine kind of guy, so I'm excited to read some of his stuff. This is Cinema Purgatorio. I don't really know why I picked this up. It's like an Alan Moore curated kind of like short story collection thing from, was it Avatar? Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know anything about it. I just kind of got it because it was around, and I'll probably get around to it at some point, but I don't know if it's really my jam. Here is the Usagi Yojimbo original set, the Fantagraphics 2 trade paperback version, which collects the first decade, like it says on the back, of Usagi Yojimbo before it moved to Dark Horse. There's a hardcover version of this, which is quite pricey and tough to find. This is the softcover one that was put out not too long ago. Puma Blues. This is kind of a weird book. I don't think Dover, who's the publisher, does that many comics. And it feels like that. Like, it feels like it's printed and looks like a prose book. And, like, it's glued binding, so it's kind of hard to see. But it's Murphy and Zuli. I believe Zuli, I don't know what his first name is. But, like, maybe Michael Zuli. He worked on Sandman, I believe, to some extent. And this is kind of like a illustrated, like, poem tone piece thing, like abstract kind of. It's just like a lot of different stuff going on. I'm not really sure if I'm ever gonna get around to reading it, because I bought it not really knowing exactly what it was, thinking it was gonna be my style, and I don't really think it is that much, but it's there. Here's a couple, 2 versions of the same book, Essex County. The softcover and the slipcase San Diego Comic-Con exclusive one. I love this story. It's one that I recommend to almost anybody who's just getting into comics, because I think it's really an amazing starting point. I talked about it previously, and it's great. It's an emotional slice of life, generation-spanning, small-town drama about some characters living in this tiny county right around the edge of Canada. It's lovely. And if you've never read it, I think it's going to appeal to a lot of people. And if you have somebody in your life who doesn't necessarily get down with comics on the reg, but is kind of open to emotional, dramatic family storytelling, I think this is a book that could get people invested. I've given it to a couple people, and universally it's been really well received from everybody that I've recommended it to. So highly recommended, and definitely a source of, I don't know, a lot of joy and simultaneously sadness. It's a very sad story, but it's done so well that you get just a lot of pleasure out of experiencing those characters' lives. Up next here is something that I am probably the least familiar with in almost my entire collection. I don't know much about it at all. This is the Wasteland set. These are the Apocalyptic editions, which are some hardcovers from, I think who puts that, Oni Press? I really don't know anything about it at all. I've seen it kicking around. A couple people online recommend it as being a really sleeper hit, awesome series. I flipped through it and I did not super care for the art, but it looks like it could be an interesting story, so I don't know. I'll give it a whirl at some point. I really don't know much about it. I know it's like a post-apocalyptic, kind of Western-ish thing. That's all I can tell you about it. Otherworld Barbara. This is a Fantagraphics series, or it's not a Fantagraphics series. It's a series of 2 books that Fantagraphics happens to be publishing in the U.S. by Moto Hagio. This is Volume 1. It's kind of like a surrealistic sci-fi manga, and Volume 2 is due out later this year, I believe, so pretty cool. The G.I. Joe Complete Collections. These are really nice. The IDW collections of the old Marvel 80s G.I. Joe books that were done by Larry Hama. I think Herb Trimpe did a lot of the stuff for this too. They're really cool. I think they're really fun. They collect the original G.I. Joe stuff, as well as, I think eventually they end up collecting some other stuff. This basically collects 1 through 24 through these 2 of the Real American Hero, the original G.I. Joe story. So, very neat. Some of them are hard to find, but I think there's trade paperbacks if you're just interested in getting into the series for cheaper. So, yeah, just some IDW stuff. And then finally on this shelf is Lock and Key, the 3 master editions. I'm just going to pull out one of them. They're basically just oversized collections which collect 2 runs each, so sort of 12 issues each, from the Lock and Key series from Joe Hill and Gabriel Rodriguez. Meant to be really good, kind of like a horror mystery thing. Joe Hill's the son of Stephen King. And yeah, this is kind of IDW's premiere, I don't know if it's, I guess, creator-owned series, but it's sort of their premiere series for something that's not reprints, because a lot of IDW stuff that I buy and I'm interested in is reprints, and this is kind of the one that is, most well-known. This and 30 Days of Night, probably the 2 that are most well-known that are current series, so a very cool set of books. And that's all for the miscellaneous general indie stuff. Next up, Euro comics, as well as more miscellaneous general indie stuff, as this shelf tends to be. Alright, we're approaching the very end here, and this shelf is sort of, well, besides these random D&D spell pack cards, this shelf is kind of my Euro comics shelf, but with some other miscellaneous stuff thrown in that doesn't really fit anywhere else. This side over here is devoted mostly to IDW Euro comics, some Dark Horse stuff, and Humanoids and other publications. Right off the bat, we have these large European graphic album size Corto Maltese books. I have 2 of them right here. I also have 2 more that my buddy is borrowing at the moment. And yeah, these are really, really cool Hugo Pratt stuff. A really nice series from IDW under their Euro Comics brand that I'm excited to collect more of. This is my lone Milo Manara book. The volume 1 of the Milo Manara library from Dark Horse, which also was written by Hugo Pratt, so similar to Corto Maltese, I guess, in that sense. And yeah, there's more of these from Dark Horse, as well as an erotica set from Dark Horse. I'm not sure how much further I'm going to dig into it, but I am interested in reading this. Next is The Tipping Point, which is a Humanoids anthology that was published, I think, last year, and it has a lot of stuff. I mean, Eddie Campbell, John Cassaday, I recognize off the top of my head. Paul Pope, Naoki Urasawa. Yeah, a lot of people working on this. All a bunch of different short stories, just in various kind of experimental styles. Samurai, Heart of the Prophet. I don't know that much about it. It's a European comic published by Titan. This hardcover is, and this is the first arc of it, or the first kind of bit to it. Looks really cool, very action-focused Euro comic on Japanese kind of samurai history, so it's pretty cool. And I think there's currently an ongoing series being published that hasn't been collected yet. Another IDW series in the Euro Comics imprint. This is The Adventures of Dieter Lumpen. A very cool book. I think this was originally published like in the pages of kind of Heavy Metal magazine in like the 80s over here. And this is the complete collection of all of those stories. Here's one that I'm really am a big fan of. I would eventually like to get the hardcovers that are out there, but I haven't. And this is the Blueberry stuff that I own. A little bit of everything. Lieutenant Blueberry, a couple of the Blueberry like mainline series books, and then Young Blueberry. If you know anything about the series, it's really long. I think there's something like 30 albums or something like that. They were originally published, written by, I forget what the guy's name is, Charlier. I don't know what his first name is. And illustrated by Jean Girard, or Mobius. I don't know if he was actually going by Girard or Mobius at this point, because I think Mobius was more of his, like, experimental sci-fi stuff. I think he was going by Girard for his... I don't know. Maybe he was going by Mobius for Blueberry. I don't really remember. But either way, just a masterclass in illustration, in draftsmanship, and in amazing settings and styles in the West. There's a lot of different series. It's kind of convoluted and hard to pick up. Some of the original ones are really hard to find, the soft covers, and they go for like $100+ online. And then Graffiti Designs has a set of, I think, 4 hardcovers, which collect all of this content, as well as some more of the Blueberry mainline stuff. But even with that, it's impossible to get the full Blueberry in English, because it hasn't all been translated yet. But it's a very cool series, and something I'm glad to have on the shelf, which I'm just going to stick over here for now, so I can bring out some of these AXA comics. I think I've talked about these in hauls before. This is a series that is really, really awesome. I love this series a lot. It's kind of like a lightly pornographic Conan with boobs sort of deal. I got these all through different eBay auctions, so I think I have a reprint or a double copy or something like that somewhere along the line from a different eBay auction. But yeah, it's illustrated by, I forget his full name, Enrique Romero, and I really love his art. I think he's an awesome artist. He did this as well as some Modesty Blaze stuff that I have further down, and it's awesome. They were, I think, British syndicated action comics, like I said, with a little bit of nudity and erotica to them, and very, very cool if you're into the art style that I am, which is the black and white heavy contrast lines, and they're very nice. Here's another Humanoids book that I sort of just picked up because it looked interesting, but I haven't dug into yet. This is Stefan Levayos. Levaloy. I'm sorry, I don't know how to say that name. But this is the Ark. It's a wordless, allegorical story from Humanoids. Here's some of my Hodorowski and Mobius stuff. This is before the ink haul, the prequel, but it was released after. The Metabarons, again expanding the Hodorowski universe with some work on the Metabarons and where the Metabaron from the ink haul comes from. This is Shamanism from Igor Barranco. This is a really cool book. It's about like shamanism, obviously, and like spirituality of Native American Indians. It's pretty beautiful and pretty well done. The Son of the Gun, a Western story from Hodorowski and Georges Bess. Bouncer, this is one of the volumes which I got originally, and then the whole thing was collected in this book, which is the complete Bouncer. Is like a one-armed gunman. I have some other Hodorowski and Mobius ink haul stuff, but it's on a different shelf. Lost Dogs, this is an original, this is the original old Jeff Lemire book that he did, printed like just a very few copies of, kind of got him into the industry, and it's really bleak, really dark. Not really that like professionally made. It's kind of rushed and sloppy, but it has a lot of heart to it. And if you're ever looking to feel depressed, you should read it. The Underwater Welder, another one of my favorites from Jeff Lemire. Very cool story. I talked about it in the Jeff Lemire graphic novel video that I did. And yeah, it's just a very creepy Twilight Zone-esque thing about time travel and breaking the pattern of suffering that goes on, sort of passed down from generations in a family. Mouse 1 and 2 from Art Spiegelman. Definitely one of the most famous and acclaimed graphic novels of all time. Very one of the kind of comics that sprouted the comics with an X, New York independent comic scene. That's it's just like a 2-volume slipcase which collects the whole thing. There's a lot of different ways to collect Mouse, I'm pretty sure, as well as annotated, and there's books written about it. It's a wide-ranging and important book. Black Hole, Charles Burns. This is a really cool book about. I'm not really exactly sure what it's about. I guess there's a lot of different ways you could read it, but it is kind of on the surface about a sexually transmitted disease, but it's more than just a disease. It's some kind of unknown infection and kind of the stigma that goes with it, and growing up in a smaller town and having this information known about you and how people treat you when they know this stuff. It's really well done. It's very cool, and his style is very awesome. Wonton Soup, an Oni collection of James Stokoe stuff that he did, kind of like in manga size. I think it's kind of like a manga influence. I mean, his art is pretty wild and out there, so it's definitely a cool collection if you're into James Stokoe. Paul Pope's Battling Boy. This is sort of like an all-ages, just fun little book. I picked it up for cheap somewhere, and I enjoyed it, but it was kind of, I don't know, didn't stick with me. Queen and Country, the definitive editions from Greg Rucka and company. I think a number of different illustrators worked on it. I have volumes 1, 2, and 3 here, as well as 4, and 2 copies of volume number 1 for whatever reason. Bone, which is a really awesome book from Jeff Smith. This is definitely one for people who grew up more on classic animation and illustration. I think this is something that could get you into comics. It's a very cool series. And From Hell, at the very end, the difficult but rewarding book from Alan Moore and Eddie Campbell about Jack the Ripper, sort of going on in a journey through the madness of this particular man who Alan Moore identifies to be Jack the Ripper, and what his motives and sort of mindset is for a lot of it. It's quite bleak, like I said, daunting and pretty tough to understand, but very rewarding if you dig through it. So that's a mix of Euro comics and some other stuff. We have one more bookshelf down here with some more archive and classic collections, and that's pretty much this whole bookshelf almost completed. Okay, for this last shelf, it's kind of a weird mix of classic archive editions and really old school stuff, as well as some newspaper strip reprints. So let's just get into it. Here, I'm just going to pull out one of these. This is the Creepy Archives from Dark Horse. I can hardly even put this up. I have just a handful of them, 2 Creepies and 2 Eries. There's something like 23 or 24 of each of these. And these collect the Creepy and Eerie magazine stuff. Magazines that Warren Publishing was putting out in the 70s, which contain some of the greatest art from that era, that Bronze Age era, black and white horror and suspense stories. And they are phenomenal. This is one of the biggest gaps in my library that I want to rectify, is not having more of these collected editions, because there's nothing quite like that time period for comics illustration. The Joe Kubert Tor libraries. These are oversized hardcovers. There's the third one, which I don't have, but this collects the appearances of Tor, which I think go back to the 50s in some backup stuff, and then eventually was moved into his own series, or maybe backups for other series. I'm not really sure, but it's a caveman story that Joe Kubert has worked on for a long time. There's been a variety of publications of that over the years, and these hardcovers collect it all. Frazetta's White Indian. This is the slipcase edition of it, which is a series that Frank Frazetta did about a white man who goes and lives with Indians and learns their ways and becomes a Indian brave, I guess you would call it. But I mean, Frazetta's art is phenomenal. I love the way he draws people, his muscles and draftsmanship and everything. And yeah, I really want to get more of his work. Another piece of Frazetta history, Thunda, King of the Congo. I think this is like one of the only series where he did a full, complete, like 24 or however long it was page series. I think he doesn't do the illustration for all of them, but he definitely works on at least one of them. And again, it's kind of an early, like, you know, prehistoric man kind of thing, a Dark Horse Archive edition of that. This is an awesome one, Setting the Standard, comics by Alex Toth, something that was published by Fantagraphics a number of years ago, which collects his work for Standard Comics, which Alex Toth did in the 50s, which was like a bunch of freelance work, and it's all collected here. A variety of different genres, but he was a capable artist in all of them, and definitely worth checking out. The complete Golden Age Airboy and Valkyrie. I sort of purchased this not really understanding what it was. Turns out it's just kind of a collection of like comics where Airboy and Valkyrie appear together. There's a lot more Airboy stuff that went on that wasn't in this book. There's a lot more Golden Age Airboy stuff. This is just the Valkyrie crossovers, and it's fine. I don't really ever plan on getting that much into it. It's like really thin. I think I got it for $6 from some sale. It was really cheap. Here's the Spirit Archives. There's a lot of Spirit Archives. I'm just going to show you like this one. But basically DC owns whatever rights they own to the Spirit stuff, and they've put them out in these archive editions, which mimic the DC archives of their other series. A standard size but sewn hardcover with nice presentation of the newspaper stuff, the Spirit Sunday stuff. I mean, it's all collected here. I think there's upwards of like almost up to 30 volumes, maybe even more than that, I'm not sure. But I just have a handful of them, which I picked up from a sale, a lot of the ones that are cheaper and easier to find. And eventually I'm going to get more of them. And then at the very end here is a number of books that Titan put out over a period of time. There's a couple different things. There's some Modesty Blaze ones. Oh, it's all kind of falling over. Mostly it's just Modesty Blaze stuff. I'm not going to pull them all out to show you, but Modesty Blaze is a series that I have a lot of love for. It's kind of like a mildly erotic spy thriller UK comic strip series. I'm going to do an individual overview on it once I've dug more into the series, but it's a really cool series. Titan's been putting these out for a long time, many years, and there's been different versions of the reprints, and it's kind of a mess. Like, this is an older version, and it's very, very thin, but it's hard to get some of the content in other places. It's a little bit all over the place. As well as this lone Garth comic, which I talked about in a haul one time, which again is an English, British action strip comic, black and white. So I'm really into British action strips, apparently. It's something that I've been getting into more and more. I think there's a lot of cool content out there that I just haven't really explored yet in that genre. So that's pretty much everything that I wanted to show in this video. There's one more shelf section that I'm going to turn over to with some of my oversized and artist editions, but as you can tell, my cough is really preventing me from talking that much more, so please forgive me and allow me to wrap up by showing a couple more books. So to wrap up this part of the collection tour, I thought I would show some of these super oversized books that I have. Unfortunately, they're so large that they're hard to fit into a decent shot, but I'll do my best. This is all just kind of random stuff over here. There's one Tarzan book, which is Tarzan in the City of Gold. This is from the Hogarth era of Tarzan comic strips that Titan has been putting out. Really nice Sunday pages reproduced in an awesome way. Here's a big weird one, Buck Rogers rather, in the 25th century. I sort of just got this because I think it was expensive, and I found it for somewhere that wasn't that expensive. It's again Sunday strip reprints of one of the earliest comics. This is by Hermes Press, which I think is like a Pennsylvania located small press, which does some of these big reprints like this. So I'm not really sure if this series actually ended up finished being collected, but there it is. Those are a couple portfolios. Here's the Wednesday Comics, a series that DC put out a while ago, which is like a return to full-page newspaper series written and drawn by a number of cool creators. This right here is my full Inkall set of the oversized coffee table books. I'm not going to show all of them, but this is the 6 volumes of the Ink Hall in coffee table size. It's quite imposing, and the art really shines on those big matte pages. This is a Yoshitaka Amano Vampire Hunter D like portfolio set, the art of Vampire Hunter D that Dark Horse put out a little while ago. I was able to pick it up kind of cheap, and it's a pretty cool book. The Flash Gordon and Jungle Jim Alex Raymond stuff. This is from IDW's Library of American Comics. It's kind of the definitive way to collect Jungle Jim and Flash Gordon in their original Sunday newspaper layouts. Alien, the artist edition, a big, oversized original art edition of the Alien adaptation written by Archie Goodwin, drawn by Walter Simonson, and published for Heavy Metal magazine way back in the day. Definitely a very cool book. A couple more portfolios. Bernie Wrightson portfolio and a Neil Adams portfolio. I think both of these are from like Creepy and Eerie era times. They're just like little 8-page portfolios. A couple gigantically huge, these books are so large, Tarzan books, which is the Hal Foster Sunday Tarzan comics. This is what Foster was doing before he did Prince Valiant. These are gigantic books printed by Dark Horse. There is a third one that I have not picked up yet, but I would like to get soon. Oh my god, they're so big. And then a couple artist editions that I have. This one over here is, I'm not going to take it out, this is the Al Williamson Star Wars artist edition. I'm going to do a video on this on its own eventually, so you'll get some shots of that. This one is the Wally Wood EC Stories artist edition, one of the pride and joys of my collection. It's an awesome piece and super cool. Again, I'm going to do a video on that individually. And then finally, as all of these things are falling over on me, here is the Jim Steranko Nick Fury artist edition, which I have done a video on previously in the channel, and is a really, really cool piece of comics history. One of my favorite runs of all time, and just artistically something that I think is so amazing and important for comic books. So let me see if I can rearrange all this stuff without... Oh, gosh. Whew. Okay, so now you can see it's all falling over. So I think it's time to end the video before I get crushed by any of these books. I hope you guys enjoyed this walkthrough. Again, I know they're very long, but I think somebody is somewhere out there is probably getting something out of them. And please leave me comments with stuff that you enjoyed looking at in here and stuff you'd like to see on the future of the channel. So I hope you have a fantastic day. Hopefully next time I'm recording something, my throat is less froggy. But you never know. I seem to come down with colds pretty often. So thanks, guys. Have a good one.